Hey everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun discussion style video, we are going to be talking about another scroll saw woodworking topic. That is why I'm standing in front of the beautiful and very versatile Rikon scroll saw here. And the subject we are going to be talking about today is compound cutting, making beautiful three-dimensional pieces of art completely from start to finish over at the scroll saw. Making sure your scroll saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees, and with a little bit of time, practice, patience, and effort, and of course taking your time and letting the blade do the work, you can create some very beautiful and inspiring three-dimensional art completely over at the scroll saw. And again, a scroll saw is a very versatile tool and a compact tool that doesn't take up a large footprint out in a garage or workshop. Now, when you talk about scroll saw woodworking, a lot of people commonly associate scroll saw woodworking with flat two-dimensional pieces of art like this design here, this artistic fish design here that we cut out in a featured video. So, you know, like just flat two-dimensional, you put a hanger on it, you hang it on the wall, Victorian fretwork, things like that. Items that are cut out multiples and then slotted or tabbed together, things like that are commonly associated with scroll saw woodworking. And for that, as I just said, you begin with a flat two-dimensional piece of material. But with compound cutting, again, you take it into the third dimension by cutting out square blocks of materials to various lengths. Here's two examples of two pieces that have been milled down to perfect 90-degree squares all the way around. And for long-time followers and subscribers, you guys know what really got my foot in the scroll saw woodworking door was the compound cut custom keychains that I like to make over at the scroll saw. Now, without exaggeration, I've probably made between 500 to 700 of these, and they are all individual, cut out completely from start to finish over at the scroll saw. To my knowledge, there's no other tool that is capable of making these in this style due to the nature of how they are made. I don't think a laser or a CNC or a lathe or anything like that could replicate these. These are very unique to the scroll saw itself. Keep in mind, I use the free Steve Good scroll saw keychain pattern generator that's available at his website at scrollsawworkshop.blogspot.com. Excuse me there, I got tongue-tied with the website address. But these are unique, one of a kind, especially if you've got a very unique individual name or a unique spelling to like a common name. These are very unique, one-of-a-kind gifts. And here's two examples that I like to take with me all the time to show when I do live scroll saw woodworking demos or when I get to travel or something, just to show them off. And again, show off the versatility of a scroll saw. This one here says my name here, Artisan Pirate. And you see that it's all the way around. Now, of course, with the nature of cutting all the way through the 1-inch square material, two of the names are reversed on the other side. But here is what I would call the face side, where you can easily and legibly read my name, Artisan Pirate. And then here's another one that I cut out, the city I love to go to and travel to and visit, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I've got these on a little clip here because I like to clip them on my book bag whenever I am out and about, especially if I get to travel somewhere new. A lot of people will see them and be like, hey, where'd you get those? You know, what gift store did you get to? Where'd you order them online? And I'll be like, no, hey, I make them custom, one of a kind. People have ordered these in bulk in the past to use them as stocking stuffers during the Christmas season, and also for one-of-a-kind heirloom Christmas ornaments with the whole family name. So that's just really humbling that people think enough of these little wooden keychains. Keep in mind, they are wooden, and if you use them in a keychain manner as they are intended to be used, they will, of course, wear out over time. Putting them in your pocket, your pocketbook, your purse, your travel bag, your suitcase, or whatever, taking them out, putting them in, taking them out, they will, of course, deteriorate over time. But some people think enough of them to use them as decorative ornaments, and you can make these out of all kinds of material. And my favorite way to make these is, of course, with poplar material over at the scroll saw. I think poplar is very underrated. And again, they start as square blocks of material. And before we go to more examples of compound cut art, I've got several examples laying here that I want to show you guys in today's video. Again, I don't want to draw it out too long or draw it out too long. I just want to inspire you guys to hopefully try the very versatile method of compound cutting over at your scroll saw out in your garage or workshop. But keep in mind, before we move on from the keychains, this is how I cut them out. They are 1-inch square strips I milled down at the table saw. And I hope it goes without saying, anytime you do compound cutting, you need to make sure your table saw or your bandsaw, wherever you mill your material down is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees, and also your scroll saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees. But they start out as this and end up as this. And Steve Good never intended them to be compound cut. That was just my unique spin out of my mind thinking of it. As soon as I seen the patterns in the program, you know, you type out the letters in the brackets there, I immediately thought compound cutting, and I was off to the races making these. And then I made so many when I first started. He meant these to be made out of flat, two-dimensional pieces of material, again going back to a scroll saw's intended purpose originally for just cutting out flat two-dimensional pieces. So just keep that in mind. It's not a compound cut software on Steve Good's keychain pattern pack. But really neat. Moving right along here, we do have two patterns prepped, how they begin life over at the scroll saw with just the patterns attached. Again, you print the patterns out. Here we have one for Klingspor Woodworking Shop, and of course Rikon tools, and you can see that I have attached the pattern on two sides of the material, and I've drilled all the pilot holes for internal cutting. But then you can also make some other unique one-of-a-kind items. Here is a nice little Christmas present ornament, and you can see how 3D and versatile this one is, made out of walnut. This is, I believe, an old Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine pattern by Fox Chapel Publishing. Again, it's a featured video over here on the platform. And when it comes to compound cutting, some projects are very small, and what you can do is make a compound cutting jig. My buddy Robert up in New York made this one for me a few years ago, and he gave it to me when he came down and visited, so thank you for that, buddy. And you can see that they are very simple to make. You can take two lengths of all thread there, some butterfly knobs there, and two pieces of material, and you can sandwich your blank that you are compound cutting in between it and tighten these screws down. And what it does is gives you more surface area to grip to while you are over at the scroll saw. And because it's made out of wood, it does not scratch up, mar, or damage your scroll saw woodworking surface. So there's something else that you might want to pick up when it comes to compound cutting or make out in your workshop. But a nice little compound cut present there. And then you can also make compound cut word art. Now here's one I made years and years ago when I was getting back into scroll saw woodworking in like 2013, 2014, something like that. This one says joy all the way around. It was a Christmas pattern. Again, I think it's a Steve Good design, but you know, Joy to the World, the famous Christmas song. So really unique there. And then you can also make the word art like this here. And this has been, other than the keychain videos, probably one of the most popular videos over here on the platform. This is again a Steve Good design, and it says enjoy today. So enjoy today, compound cut word art. And again, with the nature of it, I'll rotate it slowly there. You can see how two of the sides, of course, is backwards due to the nature of cutting all the way through the material. But this started life as a 1 1/2 inch block piece of material. And again, with a little bit of time, practice, patience, and effort, you know, the 3D word art emerges. So enjoy today. And I didn't want to stain this. As soon as we got done cutting it and we done some touch-up sanding, you know, cleaning up the insides of the letters and everything, we just clear coated it because I like people to know without a shadow of a doubt that it's one single individual piece of material cut out over at the scroll saw. And then here's one that we done for a scroll saw project video. I wanted to show some more love to Rikon because I like showing love to Klingspor and Rikon and the companies that give me shout outs and support this channel and this platform. But we done one, we modified a Steve Good design and came out with Rikon tools. Rikon tools for, of course, the tool company itself. And then all the way around, you can once again see the versatility here of how unique it is. Makes nice conversation pieces. And then you can also make little miniature diorama pieces as well. These were featured videos over here on the platform. These are older Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazines by Fox Chapel Publishing. So you have some compound cut lamp post. You have more of the traditional Victorian era lamp post here. You know, the street people would go out and light them and extinguish them every night and every morning. And then you have a more ornate one here. They've been sitting up on the shelf on the Scroll Saw Woodworking display wall. But these would make nice little diorama pieces. You know, you could cut out multiples for a little miniature diorama village, but really neat there. And then you can also make very ornate and very beautiful compound cut nesting chess pieces. This here is the nesting king piece, and what you have here in a very ornate and very, very fragile piece is the iconic king piece for the classic and elegant game of chess. And then within the chess piece, you have a miniature king there. All of the patterns were represented in the Scroll Saw magazine, from the king all the way to the pawn, and you could cut out your own unique one-of-a-kind set in your library, by a fireplace in a nice house or a mansion or something like that. These make very cool pieces here, and they are so unique, and they were made 100% from start to finish over at the Scroll Saw. Once again, showing off the Scroll Saw's versatility. You can even make props for the Halloween season or spooky season or cosplay purposes. You can, of course, make magic wands with the compound cut technique over at the Scroll Saw. Here is one. It's called the Amiibo wand. It's featured in an old issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine, but you can see how it started out square in nature, but then with the compound cutting technique we brought it into the third dimension. So now you have a nice little magic wand that is nice and sturdy and comfortable to hold in the hand for all of your magical wizarding and witch needs. So really cool there. And then you also have some compound cut word art that is really unique for display purposes. Back in February, we cut this one out for a Valentine's Day Scroll Saw project video. It says, "Love you," the iconic quote that you tell your significant other, your loved ones, your family, and friends and everything. So love you. And again, with the nature, it is reversed on two sides, but a nice little keepsake. Doesn't take long to make at the Scroll Saw during the season of love in February. You could, of course, make this very quickly out in your garage or workshop. I know in some areas of the big wide world, it is bitterly cold during the colder winter, February, January months, you know, around that time of year. But this project here can get you in and out of your workshop very quickly. And this is a Steve Good design here. Again, just so many creative ways to use the compound cutting patterns. Now, again, when it goes to attaching the pattern, you just attach it on two different sides. Here is a compound cut puzzle box, and I couldn't find the one that I made for a video over here on the platform. You can go back and see that video if you want. But here is how the pattern is attached, and this is one doing multiple cuts to make one unique individual item. You can see here, you have this side here and this side, and it's indicated here. You have your first cut, which your first cut would release the bottom of the box. You set it aside. Your second cut is the key that would lock the box lid onto it. Then you rotate it again and do your third cut, which releases another puzzle style piece for the lid. And then you rotate the waste wood again, and you draw out this little dotted line here on your block of material. You drill a pilot hole, and then you hollow out the inside of the box, and then you glue it together after a little bit of light sanding to make a unique, one-of-a-kind puzzle box completely over at the Scroll Saw. And then you can make some very miniature items over at the Scroll Saw. Again, going back to having a compound cut jig. And these two projects here I'm getting ready to show you are very small, and they are, I believe, from the old discontinued Creative Woodworking and Crafts magazines. But here you have a compound cut toothpick holder. You begin the pattern by attaching it and drilling with a small Forstner bit down in the center, and what you can do is put toothpicks in it to hold in a toothpick holder. So really neat there. Made this one years and years ago, again, early 2010s, 2013, 14, something like that, when I got back into Scroll Saw woodworking. And then you have this here, and I'd love to relocate this pattern and bring it to life for a featured video because it's just so delicate. And I made this several years ago, probably over 10, 15 years ago, but it's called a caged burr. You can see here, after you do the compound cut, it's kind of cut out like that. You go in with a Dremel tool or a carving knife, and you release the little Rubik's Cube like piece there, and you can see that it floats within the piece, trying to get it there all in frame. Again, it is very miniature in nature. You can see there, though, it just floats inside. But again, just a nice little conversation piece to sit on a shelf, desk, or countertop for people to talk about and be amazed that it was made on a Scroll Saw. Now, of course, you can also cut out compound cut word art. If you guys remember me making this one here for Klingspor Woodworking Shop, You can cut this out. This is an old Creative Woodworks and Crafts magazine pattern, and it wasn't Klingspor per se. It was individual letters that you lined up to spell whatever name you wanted in the English alphabet, and I of course wanted to show Klingspor Woodworking Shop some love. But you can go above and beyond and make a nice little base to display the art that you make over at the scroll saw. And again, this base here is a Steve Good design made from 1/4" material. So you've done some traditional scroll saw work here, and then you jazzed it up with a beautiful piece of compound cut word art here. And this bracket here was in a pattern pack that Steve Good offered that had a lot of compound cut quotes, very similar to the Love You compound cut block I showed you earlier. And that's going to do it for just traditional compound cutting over at the scroll saw, and that's where you're just cutting out on two sides of the material. Now you can take it a step further, and I've got 3 projects to show you here before we close the video, and make a multi-part compound cut project to really show off what a scroll saw is capable of. We made this compound cut flower in a vase, and it took 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of material. This was made entirely from upcycled 2x4 construction grade 2x4s that a very dear friend of mine gave to me, and we cut it out from start to finish over here on the channel. But again, some very basic material and a few simple cuts combined to make a beautiful artistic flower that will never wilt or dry up, and a nice little vase there. So really cool. This is a Steve Good design. And then we made this here, and this is very fragile, very delicate. I have it sitting aside, not on the scroll saw display wall. I've got it sitting off on its own. But this is a leaf-themed candle holder from Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Travel Publishing. So you can see here how fragile, delicate, and ornate it is, and it is several pieces here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 compound cuts, and then the base here, which is cut out in the flat 2-dimensional manner that I talked about earlier. But all of it combines to make this beautiful flower holder. So really, really unique, very, very fragile. You can see how thin that wood gets at the top there. And again, here is how those patterns start out. Here's one that I wasn't very happy with how one of the pieces came out, and instead of discarding it, I kind of keep it to show to people. But we cut out the side profile of the leaf, and again, you can see how small it tapers down to, and then we cleaned it up, taped it back together, rotated it, and then cut out the side of the leaf to get one of these here. And it kind of simulates wood bending over at the scroll saw, so that's really cool as well. Really neat. And then the final compound cut design I have to show you today is this little magical, mythological folklore dragon. You guys know I love fantasy and medieval folklore. I love studying it. I'm just fascinated with it and the curiosity and everything. But this one was made completely, again, over at the scroll saw. And again, this one here is a Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine pattern. But the fragile tail, the fragile forearms here, the paws, the wings, and the dragon itself were all individual compound cuts over at the scroll saw. And then there was just 2 simple rings here at the bottom out of some 1/4" material to make a nice little pedestal base. Of course, with a design like this, you would want a more, I feel like you would want a more simplistic base for the project to be glued on or fixed to, so it does not take away from the beautiful and delicate nature of the art you are trying to display on the base, if that makes any sense. But again, with a little bit of time, practice, patience, and effort, beautiful and creative 3-dimensional art can be made over at the scroll saw. Again, you can cut out flat 2-dimensional pieces with slots and tabs and glue them together in a 3-dimensional manner. But you can take, as I said, one single block of material and cut out on 2 sides with a little bit of time, practice, patience, and effort, and the beautiful, creative 3D image will emerge. I feel like it's my goal to still keep the scroll saw a relevant tool going forward now that CNCs and laser engravers and everything are becoming more and more affordable for people to have out in their garage or workshops. And again, as I said at the beginning, a scroll saw is not a tool that takes up a large footprint out in a garage or workshop. You can get that. Mine is not on a stand, but you can get them on a stand or buy a stand to put them on and put them on wheels to move around and take them outside and scroll on a beautiful sunshiny day. Of course, you wouldn't do that with a CNC machine or laser, so they're very mobile. They're great tools to take to do live demos on. I've done live demos on the Rikon scroll saw as well as the older Delta scroll saw I had out here in the workshop for years and years. It's still out here. It's under this one on the shelf down there. But again, I hope this video inspires you guys to at least try compound cutting. Of course, making sure your scroll saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees is essential to make sure all of the compound cuts that I showed you in today's video come out cleanly and precisely. And of course, you guys know that I do make the custom 3D printed blade alignment jigs to quickly make sure that your scroll saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees. And with this one here, I keep on hand. I've got 2 magnets glued to the back of it to where it can easily stick right there on the side of the scroll saw. That way it is in easy reach. But hopefully this video has inspired you guys. If you've never tried scroll saw compound cutting, I encourage you to do so. And please, if you try it for the first time, please let me know what your results was when you make some beautiful and 3-dimensional pieces of art. That's going to be about all for this one. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one. And remember guys, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, inspire, educate, elevate, and motivate one another. And I'll see you guys real soon.